Hey everyone, welcome into our next episode that we have. This is all about sustainable style, and today we have Dani de Roche with us from North Carolina. She is the designer of Picnic, which is an adorable line that is sustainable. Picnicwear is a slow fashion brand, ethically made by hand from vintage and dead stock materials. Most notably, what she's wearing right now is vintage towels, which is so much fun. Dani's worked in the industry as a fashion designer for over 10 years and started Picnicwear in a response to her dissatisfaction with the industry's shortcomings, which we're going to talk about her shortcomings of the industry. And recently, she moved there with her clothing, accessories, and now the majority of the sewing is done by skilled workers in New York City. And they take great comfort. Anyone who buys her pieces knows that all of her workers are paid well, fair, and above the New York City minimum wage, which is really important and a part of what we're trying to do here. Picnicwear offers minimal waste and maximum authenticity, and it's future vintage over future garbage, which I just love that quote. That is phenomenal. And I love your whole mission. You're so creative, and your Instagram is colorful, whimsical, and I love seeing you model your own fashions.
Thank you. I get a little tired of it, but I'm in the middle of nowhere in North Carolina, so not many potential models out here.
Right, you are the best model though. It's so cool. So tell us a little about how you came up with the idea of Picnicwear.
So it actually was really born at the start of the pandemic because I had been working for 10 years in the industry, as you said in that great little intro. And I did leave my work as a fashion designer at the end of 2018. And then 2019, I was like trying to see if I could do things on my own. I was freelancing a lot, but still doing what I had been doing for many years, which was designing sweaters. And then the pandemic hit, and the fashion industry was hit really hard. And I was just, had been so unhappy with even the work I had been doing for freelance jobs and everything. So I thought, like, why don't I take a crack at it on my own? And I had some vintage towels. I've been a collector of vintage for a long time. I had some vintage towels, not a lot of other fabric. And I was like, what can I do with these vintage towels? They were so beautiful to begin with, but I just really was wanting to make something. So I made a hat, and it kind of became the signature Picnicwear hat. It's kind of what I focused on all last year. And then I started branching into new things this year. But yeah.
And all of your little towel outfits, I mean, every time I see one, there's one that's like pink and bright orange. Like, you have so many fun colors from these towels. Yeah. I used to be a big collector of towels and all things vintage when I lived in LA. So I totally understand that obsession with like one thing, you have to keep buying that one thing.
Yeah. And even though it's just like one thing, there's so many, as you said, like so many different colors and textures and patterns. So it like never gets old. I keep finding new towels that I'm like, oh my God, this is my favorite towel ever. You'll hear me say that a lot in my Instagram stories. This is the best towel I've ever found.
That's so
I say it every week.
And what attracted you to wanting to incorporate your design work into slow fashion versus fast fashion?
Well, I think it was kind of basically just a huge rejection of what I had been doing and partaking in the past 10 years. I had been working for fast fashion brands, which wasn't necessarily like if I had, come out of school and it had been totally up to me what I would pursue in terms of like what kind of brands I would work for. I would not have picked fast fashion, but it kind of like found me, and then I got a little bit stuck. So the slow fashion was just my way of being like, just kind of rebelling against everything I had been doing the past 10 years and all these things that I had been so unhappy with in terms of like how the business is run from like every single aspect of it. I was just,
what are a few of the things that you saw that you didn't like, that you kind of said, this is a red flag?
I think in general, this kind of, I felt like designing for a fast fashion brand was just like constantly needing to design new things all the time. Like we were really just like peddling trends, trying to figure out how to get the customer to buy something new every single season, how to make it the customer feel like what they had bought last season wasn't cool anymore. Now they need to buy something different. And always this focus on price point, because the only way to get the customer to buy something new every season is to offer it at such a bargain price that they can't refuse it.
Yes.
And what they bought last season doesn't look very good anymore. It's pilling, it's kind of falling apart. Maybe it's even got a hole in the seams. So they need to buy something new. So that whole system, like the structure of it in general, just really repulsed me. And of all those years, I never really wore any of the things I designed, because that's just not the type of clothing that I wear. Like I said, I'm passionate about vintage, and that phrase future vintage over future garbage is something that's just been my personal ethos for many years. My husband and I say it all the time. Like when there's something we really want, whether it's, it doesn't have to be an investment piece. We don't have to have paid a lot of money for it, but sometimes we do. And we say like, this is really special. I'm going to splurge on this, but it's future vintage. I'm going to have this forever. I'm going to hand it down to my kids. It's special. It's a really special piece of clothing. So that's the kind of shopper I am. So it felt very weird for me to be part of this machine that was just so different from my own ethos.
That's a good point, because it used to be that there were 4 seasons, and now it's like every week they have to be launching different items every single week.
Daily. Like you get Zara's emails and they've got a new product every day,
Oh my gosh, it is insane.
Yeah.
And what's interesting too is I like that you say it's your future garbage, right? Everyone is just buying this stuff. They're going to wear it once or twice and then throw it into the garbage or donate it. And from what I understand, our castaways are often being shipped to other countries. I talked to one designer from Kenya, and she said that they have tons of our stuff being shipped from the US.
Yeah.
And then it goes right into their landfills when they can't use it. So they only use about 40% of what we send, and the rest goes into the landfill.
Yeah. And a lot of people think that, when they're donating to the Goodwill or something, they're doing something really great. But I don't have the exact statistics, but such a small percent of what gets donated to a place like Goodwill even ends up on the floor of the thrift store. And when that stuff doesn't sell, like you said, it gets shipped to the global south, which, by the way, the interesting thing about that is like the production is done in the global south. So first of all, it starts with really low wages for these workers, poverty wages, stolen wages in many cases. And then it ends up their problem being sent to them from countries like the US. So because the circle is just terrible from beginning to end. It's not a circle, it's just a straight line. So
it's like, when does it end? And we're never satisfied with what we have. There's always something new to be bought. That's
exactly
true. Well, I loved, you even have a lot of vintage items, like little one-of-a-kind things. I saw some teacups, but I was a big collector of vintage cups. I have no idea why. I must have been like, it was a second life or something.
Right.
But it's so much fun to find treasures. And I feel like your Instagram page features so many independent, unique little treasures.
Yeah, I've been, especially since I moved to the South, it's like I've always been passionate about like thrifting and finding really special things. And I wasn't being in New York, that was really hard to do because, you know, all the stores are really expensive and there's so many people looking for the same things.
True.
So I just, you know, have had a lot of fun being able to source that and wanted to share that with my followers because a lot of my followers are really passionate about vintage too. So yeah, and I, like you said, I did a little homewares collection. That was the first time I did that, but shipping is really expensive. So that makes like you have like a reasonable price thing, and then all of a sudden they have to pay a lot of money on shipping. So it makes it a little harder, but it was still a really fun thing to put together.
Very good point. And then in terms of where your items can be found, are you only online?
I am at this point. It's something I would love to figure out how to do is get it in different places because I'm such a tactile person. And I know that my customers would love to be able to see things in person before they purchase. I try and like give a real feeling for it on Instagram, but there's, you know, it's just not the same as being able to hold something. But what gets really hard is that, you know, when every piece is one of a kind, it's really hard to do wholesale with brands because for a lot of them, you know, if they're selling online, then, you know, like I'm doing one photo represents one garment.
Yes.
And that's really hard to, you know, for another brand to take on. It's hard for myself to take on. So I'm trying to figure out, you know, are there small shops, boutiques that are interested in the one of a kind model, and how that would work. So that's a 2022 goal.
What about doing those little gift shows? You know, they have like a gift events and they have.
Yeah, I mean, I've done a little bit of that. Like I did some pop-up events. I did one in LA. There are a lot of work to put into them to do the display and everything. But I definitely want to do a few of those. I think just figuring out what the right ones would be to kind of like reach the right people would definitely be something I plan to look into.
That makes a lot of sense. What would you tell someone who wanted to start creating their own sustainable style? What encouragement would you give them?
I would tell them first and foremost, the most sustainable garments are the clothes that are already hanging in your closet. So even if your closet is full of fast fashion, don't just trash all that and start from scratch because that is probably the least sustainable thing you could do. It's to cherish the things you already own. So, and then as you start doing that, you start to appreciate how things are made. And then when you do need new things or just, you know, really want something new, you start to consider, you know, workmanship and what to you is something that you can see yourself wearing multiple times. What makes you feel so special when you put it on that you want to put it on every other day? So to me, like those are the main things when it comes to sustainability, because it's really thinking about what's sustainable for your wardrobe, what's sustainable for your lifestyle. And then when it comes to when you do want to buy something new, thinking about, you know, how transparent is that brand about their supply chain? How transparent is that brand about their production model, about, you know, where they source their raw materials and things like that? And that can be really daunting. So I think that, like, you know, a little bit goes a long way. And I'm always saying progress, not perfection. You know, if you try and be perfect and only buy the most sustainable items, you're just going to get really overwhelmed and beat yourself up. And that's never going to actually help you. So
what one brand do you recommend that you think is doing the right thing?
You know, I'm just going to give a shout out to like all my other fellow upcyclers and small brands. There's lots of brands. There's a brand based out of LA, but she's a Peruvian designer and she produces in Peru. Her name is Loti. Shop Loti, Loti. There's, oh my gosh. What's that one? Also in LA. Sway Shop, Suay, amazing. I went to their shop in LA.
Cycles and everything. I've seen her pictures of stacks of clothes.
Yes, amazing. Yeah. There's the Consistency Project she's based in New York and Hawaii. There's so many. I mean, once you start finding them, you get caught in a rabbit hole and you can keep finding them.
I love it.
And then for basics, my favorite is actually called, oh my gosh, I'm blanking, but it's Favorite. I think it's just Favorite.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm looking it up.
Okay.
The Big Favorite.
The Big Favorite?
So,
all right, I'll check it out.
that's my fave for like, I mean, I don't really buy basics myself, but for underwear, I love her company. So that's a great one.
That's a good idea. I love that.
Yeah.
Well, you have a lot of fun pieces, and of course, we're going to be featuring them in this video for everyone to see. So I'm excited to share your message, to share your creativity, your design aesthetic, and for anyone who wants to I feel like your clothing has texture to it.
Yeah.
And
Definitely.
character, like it's cozy clothing. So
Yeah.
fun and fanciful and has a lot of personality. It's also comfy.
Yes.
And I think people are looking for that kind of clothing now.
Yeah. And in terms of like the shapes and silhouettes I try and design things that are not like super structured and like confining. Like you said, I want everything to feel comfortable, and because my production is so small batch, I have to try and make shapes that kind of can fit a range of bodies. But what that also means is that it can fit your body as it changes, because nobody's body, well, some people, yes, stay exactly the same over time, but like, sometimes we put on winter weight or whatever. So like we make shorts in the summer and they've got elastic waistbands. And so, everything is made to feel really comfortable.
Well, I'm excited to showcase you, and I hope that you get a lot more people recognizing your brand because you really deserve it.
Thank you so much, Wendi.
Thank you so much for meeting with me today, and I'll be putting her Instagram account at the very end. So thank you so much, Dani.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Dani was just so delightful. I loved her personality, and I hope you loved her whimsical fashions that are all created from vintage designs and vintage pieces of towels. My gosh, how creative. So we can get truly creative when you think about sustainable style, and you can follow her on Instagram, and stay tuned because I'll be introducing another designer with my next sustainable style show. Until then, bye everybody.